Hello, my name is Jacqueline Bustos, and today I'm going to be going over the book that I read for this assignment, and it is called Out of Our Minds Learning to be Creative by Sir Ken Robinson. And in the book, he attempts to answer some questions such as why is it essential to promote creativity, what is the problem, and what can be done about it. As you can see, this is Sir Ken Robinson, and Sir Ken Robinson works with many different entities, but his relationship with this class is that he works with education systems to unlock the creative energy of people and organizations, as well as being an educator himself. I feel that essentially this class or the purpose of this class is to unlock our creative energy for the use of different technology in order to be able to do the same for our students in our future classroom. So the theme that I got out of this book is how the education system affects creativity. The thesis of the book is basically how our current education system does not allow for students to actually be creative and also to provide strategies for educators as well as other stakeholders. His overall aim is to tell others that just because you don't think you are creative doesn't mean you aren't creative. And one of the things that he mentions in the book is that the existing educational systems are considered to be the main reason why people cannot fulfill their creative potential. And I feel that this is true due to all of the parameters and stakes that are put on the performance of students and how they are not allowed to basically show their knowledge in different means of expression, and that's a whole other topic, but I do agree with him in how students are not essentially able to use their creativity to show if they know what something is or what it isn't. For the summary of content, the summary of this book is Sir Ken Robinson discussing how our current educational system actually destroys and does not allow for students to be creative. In the first 8 chapters, so chapters 1 through 8, he discusses what creativity and being creative is, as well as determinants for creativity. And in the determinants for creativity, he basically names the educational system the main reason as to why students aren't creative. He discusses how there are so many stakes and how it's a world driven by, like, students do what they have to do to get a certain grade. They're not doing what they need to do in order to show what the content is actually asking them to do, and that is because they are not allowed to use their own creative thoughts. They are to use a rubric that is provided by their teachers, and that just goes up a whole ladder of students' expectations and what they're supposed to put out. In chapter 9, he discusses about being a creative leader, and he provides his readers with the strategic roles in 3 different areas. And those 3 different areas are personal, group, and cultural. And these 3 different strategic roles allow for being a creative leader. Finally, in chapter 10, he discusses on how to learn to be creative. And there's a quote that I like that's on page 247. And he states, promoting creativity systemically in schools is about transforming the culture of education as a whole. The best way to achieve that aim is to do what policymakers keep asking and get back to basics. The basics are often thought to be reading and writing and the so-called STEM disciplines, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. All of these are important. But before talking about curriculum, there are more basic questions about the purpose of education in the 21st century. What is it for, and what is the real and what is at the real core of the process. There is a useful analogy with the theater. My analysis of the book. So, in my analysis of the book, I do agree with Sir Ken Robinson that one, just because you don't think you are creative doesn't mean that you aren't. And I mean, personally, because I've never thought myself to be a creative person, but I think it's because we set up different, I don't think they're standards, but we set up these boundaries and we don't think that we can do certain things. And then you end up trying something and you realize that you are actually pretty good at something, but because you're tested and told that you're not very good at these things, you don't think that you are. Number two, the educational system actually drives or kills the creativity for students. Um, I also really like what he says is that, some kids or all kids go into preschool or kindergarten being very creative, thinking that they can take anything on. And at the end of their educational career, that creativity is driven out of them because the concerns are different. Your concern is no longer being creative. Your concern is how to get a good grade. I do also agree with him, and I love a statement that he makes in chapter 3, page 49, and I'm going to read that. Creativity is not solely to do with the arts or about being an artist, but I believe profoundly that we don't grow into creativity, we grow out of it. And that is going along with his statements of saying that, number one, creativity is not just about being an artist. Creativity is far more than that. And I think that we do grow out of being creative because it is driven out of us at the end of our educational career. We are not given the autonomy to do things as we wish and have to follow, things at a certain level. And this is not just in the school system. I think that this happens everywhere as well as in jobs. He also does discuss creativity in the workplace and how so many people do not work out for certain companies because they're a good match on paper, but once they start working there, they either realize they're not happy there or the employer does not think that they are a match. I also like how he discusses what the three main roles of education are, which one is individual, two is cultural, and three is the economic. Um, and to begin with, the individual is to develop individual talents and sensibilities. Cultural is to deepen the understanding of the world. And economic is to provide the skills required to earn a living and be economically productive. He then goes on to state that, you know, that the education system is possibly failing miserably in all three of those areas. And to a certain degree, I do agree with him. I think that economically we are not taught on how to earn a living. Like, we aren't taught to do taxes, we aren't learned to do many things. And as far as individuality, I don't think that there's much of that in the education system. To a certain degree, I think there is, and then there isn't. So I play devil's advocate with that. But cultural, um, to deepen the understanding of the world, I think it goes into a certain extent where we are only taught what the education system wants to teach us. Overall, I think the book is clear, and I think that this book is a diverse read for parents, students, employers, stakeholders, and education um, employees or educators. They would benefit from the subject matter. Educators would be able to learn more about the education system and how changes they can employ or make can help ignite the creativity a student once had. Personally, I can say that this book made me realize that one day um, I hope to reignite the creativity of my students. I know that I will have rules, regulations, and standards that I will have to follow, but I would like to give my students the availability and chance to be able to show what they do know in their own means of expression. Um, I was actually really surprised that I liked this book. When I saw it, I was kind of scared because the edition or the book that I received is actually quite old, and I didn't think that it would be very interesting. But as I read the book, I learned a lot, and I read a lot of things that that I've already learned about in my program here at the University of Laverne. But it's nice to kind of have these concepts reignited, and it's nice to be reminded that my job as an educator or future educator is to make sure that my students receive the best of me, and I'm able to now, I guess something that I would like to add is to reignite their creativity. So overall, this is a good read and I do definitely recommend it. Thank you.